Before we begin this tale, if you find yourself moved by stories of quiet strength and profound change, please consider subscribing to the channel and hitting that like button. Your support fuels these narratives and allows me to bring more compelling stories to life. Thank you. It was a Wednesday when the truth hit me, not a day marked by thunder or portent, but an ordinary, unremarkable midweek afternoon. The fluorescent hum of my kitchen, the lukewarm, reheated lasagna clinging to the glass container, a mundane canvas for a moment that would carve a chasm in my world. I was still in my work clothes, shoes kicked off, one sock, half shed, a silent testament to the day's weary collapse. My mom called in the afternoon. There was no prelude, no gentle easing into the news. Just an immediate plunge into flight times and sunscreen, her voice light, almost giddy, as she casually mentioned how the resort had those ridiculous floating trays for breakfast in the pool, a dream plucked from a trending feed. My first reaction was confusion. I hadn't heard anything about a trip. A frantic scroll through the family chat, a desperate search for the digital breadcrumbs I must have missed. So I asked her straight up, just to clarify when the trip was and if she needed help booking my ticket. There was a pause. Not long, but long enough for a daughter to hear her own worth being weighed on the other end of the line. And then she said it, lightly, like it was reasonable, like I'd understand. "Oh, honey, this one's just for your brother. A celebration, you know? For all he's accomplished this year. Just for him." At first, I thought I'd misheard her, that maybe I'd missed some crucial context. But she kept talking, already moving on to how the rooms had outdoor showers and how Dad's back was feeling better, so he might actually go snorkeling this time. She didn't even pause to see if I was breathing. My brother, Nathan, had just finished his degree in architecture. He had a job lined up, sure. And yeah, okay, he had some wins this year. But so did I. I'd paid off my car. I'd been promoted to lead at the clinic. I'd been taking care of Grandma until she passed. But apparently, none of that translated into the glittering mirage of beachside mojitos and all-inclusive buffets. I didn't say much. Just a vague, oh, cool and nice. Have fun. I let her keep talking while I stared at the greasy, congealing edges of the lasagna in my container, feeling my stomach turn like I'd just been kicked in the gut by someone I didn't think had the power to hurt me like that anymore. When we hung up, I sat on the couch and stared at the wall for I don't even know how long. And then, like a phantom limb, moving on its own accord, I opened the family group chat. The last few messages were photos of Nathan at his graduation, each one a fresh stab, proclaiming, "Our boy. So proud. You're going places." Not a single mention of my name. No quiet acknowledgement for the long nights with Grandma, no whisper of thanks for always being there. I scrolled back further. Birthday messages, holiday plans, shared memes, always centered around him, always about what he was doing next. I'd been orbiting the family, not a part of the core. So, I did something I'd never done before. I deleted the chat. Not muted. Not archived. Deleted. A final, deliberate severing. Then, I got on Craigslist, a digital ocean of escape, for one-bedroom apartments in the city. The next day, I booked a viewing for a cramped studio above a bakery on Grand Avenue. Nothing special, perhaps. An ancient radiator hissed like a forgotten beast, the floorboards groaned underfoot, each step a declaration of independence. Yet, it had its own entrance, a defiant autonomy and a generous window gazing onto the street, a direct line to a world that didn't know my past. And for the first time in a long time, it felt like something that belonged only to me, untainted, unshared, fiercely mine. I signed the lease that afternoon using the last bit of my bonus from work. I told no one. Not the architects of my quiet agony, not my brother, not even Jess, my default confessor when the family got too loud. I told my boss I needed to switch to part-time temporarily, citing personal adjustment, and she didn't ask too many questions. I think she saw the look in my eyes, something hollow, something brittle, and decided it wasn't her business. That weekend, while my family packed swimsuits and sandals and obsessively triple-checked TSA rules about sunscreen, as if their meticulous adherence to regulations could somehow erase my existence, I packed cardboard boxes and dragged my mattress, A silent burden of liberation, up 3 flights of creaking stairs alone. I asked for no help. I craved no help. Every time I stumbled on a stair or banged my knee on a doorknob, I reminded myself that they were clinking glasses, sangria-soaked, beneath thatched cabanas, deliberately erasing me from their sun-drenched narrative. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful at first. It was sharp, like static in a quiet room, like your own breath sounding too loud because nobody else is around. But then something shifted. I laid on the mattress, no sheets yet, just me and my body stretched across the floor, and I felt it. Peace, perhaps. Or simply the crushing weight of relief. No one needed me. No one expected me. I was no longer an obligation or a tag-along or a guilt-trip passenger. I had disappeared, and no one even noticed. You ever had that moment? That cold realization that if you walked out of the room and never came back, no one would ask where you went. That your absence might be easier for people than your presence. I sat in that thought for a long time. And then I did one more thing. I changed my phone number. Not in a fit of pique, not on a whim of vengeance, but with the cold, clear precision of Insurgent's cut. It was necessary. I was no longer the background character in someone else's story. And while they swam in clear blue waters and posted grinning pictures holding tropical drinks, I stared at a bare wall and made a promise to myself. They didn't invite me because I wasn't worth celebrating. Fine. Let them come home to a version of me they'll wish they hadn't ignored. Let them feel what I felt. Emptiness where someone used to be. While my family clinked their overpriced resort cocktails and floated, adrift in an infinity pool overlooking a sea so impossibly blue it seemed filtered, a fabricated paradise, I was standing barefoot on a cold linoleum floor in my new apartment, holding a half-full roll of packing tape and wondering if I'd made the biggest mistake of my life or the smartest decision I'd ever had the guts to carry through. The walls were a faded beige, the kind that had absorbed years of other people's choices. And the only furniture I had was a mattress I dragged up myself, a second-hand desk with a dent in one leg, and a humble milk crate, a temporary altar to my newfound independence. There were no curtains, just those old metal blinds that clinked every time the wind pushed through the cracked window. It smelled like dust and wood and weirdly cinnamon, probably from the bakery downstairs. It wasn't luxury. It wasn't picturesque. And it certainly wasn't somewhere anyone would gift as a reward, but it was mine, entirely mine, and that made it sacred. I started work the following Monday. New job, new routine, a new name tag, a stiff, unfamiliar badge on my chest, a uniform of quiet rebellion. It wasn't glamorous. I was working reception at a mid-sized law firm, the kind of place where everyone wore navy suits and who spoke in corporate whispers and relied on phrases like circling back and per my last email. But it paid better than the clinic. And more importantly, it had no echo of my last name, no shadow of shared history. No one here asked about my family. No one knew Nathan. I wasn't someone's sister or someone's daughter. I was just Emily. Just Emily. And for the first time in years, that was enough. Meanwhile, their vacation was happening in real time on my social media feed, whether I wanted it to or not. My cousin posted a group shot, Nathan front and center, arms around both our parents, all of them sun-kissed and beaming, while my mom captioned it with something painfully transparent. So proud of this boy. He deserves every minute of this. Like I didn't even exist. Like they hadn't subtracted me from the picture. Like I wasn't a subtraction worth mentioning. Every time I saw a new post, it was like a pinprick. Sharp, fast, and irritating, but the kind that accumulates until you're just covered in invisible wounds. I muted them, not unfollowed, not blocked. Just enough silence to let myself breathe without picking at the scabs. You know what's funny? While they were probably laughing over shrimp cocktails and spa treatments, I was learning how to breathe in a space that didn't echo someone else's narrative. I bought myself a potted plant, a cheap, resilient aloe vera in a chipped ceramic pot, and I placed it on the windowsill where the light came in strongest around noon. That little plant became a symbol, some kind of unspoken contract with myself. Something that depended on me and me alone to survive. Every time I watered it, I felt like I was proving something. I wasn't just disappearing. I was building quietly, strategically, like revenge. But not with fire, with roots. My phone didn't ring once. Not once. Not even a check-in. Not even a casual, "Hey, you okay?" They were gone for 9 days. 9 whole days of vacation without a single word to the daughter they left behind. And honestly, I think that silence stung more than the initial exclusion. Because deep down, even after all the cold shouldering and passive favoritism and years of being the reliable one, I still thought maybe someone, just one of them, would reach out, ask how I was, tell me they missed me. But they didn't. Not my mom, not my dad, and sure as hell not Nathan. I walked to work each morning with a coffee in one hand and that stubborn little voice in the back of my head saying, "You see? You were right. You were always invisible to them." And that voice, as bitter as it sounded, became my compass. I didn't cry. I didn't spiral. I didn't self-destruct. I sharpened every day. I woke up earlier, worked harder, spoke less, and watched more. There's something powerful about being underestimated, about knowing everyone's eyes are looking past you while you quietly become untouchable. I started making changes, small ones at first. I opened a new bank account, different branch, different everything. I updated my emergency contact to a friend from work. I scrubbed my online presence, deleted old photos, archived every family picture that made me feel like a stranger standing next to people who pretended I mattered. Then I did something that surprised even me. I went to a bar alone, not to meet someone, not to drink away the anger, but just to prove I could exist in a space without being tethered to anyone's idea of who I used to be. And sitting there sipping on a cheap whiskey sour, I realized something that I'll never forget. I didn't miss them. I missed the idea of what they were supposed to be. The version of family that belongs in Christmas cards and feel-good movies, but not the real them. Not the people who could leave me behind so easily. That was the most unsettling part. That realization didn't make me sad. It made me calm, numb maybe, but in a way that felt like armor rather than weakness. When they got back, I didn't hear about it. No, we're home, text, no phone call brimming with shared stories or inside jokes. I only knew they were back because Nathan posted a smug boomerang of his suitcase hitting the airport floor, captioned with a dismissive, "Back to reality." I stared at it for a long moment, then clicked mute on him too. Not out of pettiness, out of necessity. I had vanished. Not dramatically, not in flames, quietly, strategically, and while they were still swimming in memories of some fake family utopia, I was living something real, something earned. And the best part, they didn't even know I was gone yet. They returned on a Sunday evening, just as the sun was starting to sink behind the cul-de-sac of identical houses where I used to live. That golden hour light stretching long, warm shadows across the pavement like some quiet metaphor for everything that had changed while they were gone. I wasn't there, of course. My car wasn't in the driveway. My keys weren't on the hook by the back door. My room wasn't my room anymore. It was empty, scrubbed clean, stripped of everything personal, like I had never existed there in the first place. And that, I think, is what got them first. Not the silence, not even the fact that I hadn't texted in over a week, but the eerie reality that I hadn't just left. I had removed myself completely. There was no forwarding address, no note with a heart and a little smiley face saying, "Be back soon." No sign of warmth or softness or daughterly affection, just absence, plain and unapologetic. My mother called that night finally, perhaps out of guilt, perhaps out of genuine confusion, but her call went straight to voicemail. So did the 5 after that. She must have stared at her screen when the green bubble popped up instead of the blue iMessage. It's funny how even something as small as that can feel like a gut punch when you're finally trying to reach someone you assumed would always be there, even if you hadn't noticed they'd been fading for years. My dad tried emailing, like that somehow made it more formal, more serious. Subject line, "Please contact us. We're worried." The body of the email was 3 lines long, filled with statements instead of questions. "We're back. Call us. Let us know where you are." Not a single word about how I might be feeling. Not one line that said they were sorry. Not even a feeble attempt at pretending they understood what they'd done. I watched all this unfold from the safety of distance. Checking my old voicemail through a burner app, reading the subject lines of their emails without opening them, allowing myself the smallest taste of their anxiety without giving them the satisfaction of a reply. I wasn't trying to punish them with silence. I was letting the silence speak for itself. For once, I didn't have to explain. I didn't have to justify or beg for understanding. My absence was its own argument, its own thesis statement, screaming louder than I ever could have with words. At work, things were shifting. People started to notice me, not as someone's sister or the quiet girl from reception, but as someone who showed up early, stayed late, and carried herself like she had something to prove, even if she didn't talk about it. I took on small projects that weren't in my job description. I asked questions, made suggestions, gently nudged my way into conversations that weren't meant for me, and made myself indispensable. I wasn't planning a reinvention. I was building a fortress. And every brick was made of the same raw material, the pain of being forgotten. Then one afternoon, just as I was finishing up a stack of client forms, someone walked into the lobby who made my spine stiffen like I'd been jolted with electricity. Nathan. Of course, it was him. Same smug walk, same expensive watch Mom probably paid for, same perfectly gelled hair that had always earned him compliments from women twice his age. He looked around like he belonged there, like he had every right to show up in my new life and demand answers. And when his eyes landed on me, I didn't flinch, didn't look away, didn't even blink. I just stared at him like I was seeing an old classmate I hadn't missed. He walked up to the desk and tried to smile, tried to look casual, but there was a stiffness in his posture that betrayed him. He said, "What the hell is going on?" I told him I was at work and if he needed to schedule a consultation, he could speak with the paralegal. He didn't appreciate the sarcasm. "Mom is losing her mind," he said, like that was supposed to mean something to me. "She thinks something happened to you. Why didn't you tell anyone you were moving out?" I paused, then tilted my head slightly. "Did it occur to you to ask me if I was okay before you went off sipping cocktails with your achievement medal around your neck?" He rolled his eyes like he always did when he didn't have a real answer. "Come on, it wasn't about excluding you. It was just supposed to be a celebration." I leaned forward slightly, keeping my voice steady. "So, celebrate him. Keep celebrating him. Just don't act surprised when I stop showing up to clap for it." That night, I sent him an email. Just 2 attachments. One was a screenshot of the group chat where my mother had written plain as day, "Let's just make this vacation about Nathan. He's earned it." The second was the note she sent only to him. Yes, I saw it by accident once when she left her phone open on the counter, saying, "Don't tell Em yet. I don't want her to feel bad, but I really think this trip should just be for you." No context, no compassion, just the raw truth. The subject line of my email said, "So we're clear." I didn't write anything else. I didn't need to. After that, I blocked him. Not out of spite, out of strategy. I was done giving them my energy, my explanations, my grief. I wasn't trying to win anymore. I was simply stepping out of the game. Let them guess where I'd gone. Let them wonder what they'd missed. Let them sit in the very same uncertainty they'd handed to me, wrapped in palm trees and room service receipts. Because here's the thing about exclusion. Once someone makes it clear that your presence is optional, you start treating them the same way, and it stings. It stings bad. They had made me feel invisible. So now I was showing them what invisible really looked like. It had been nearly 3 weeks since that silent Sunday when they came home to a ghost-shaped hole in their lives. And in that time, I had built something resembling peace. Not the kind you hang on a wall or wear like a badge, but the quiet, lived-in kind that settles into your bones and makes you stand a little taller without knowing it. The kind that doesn't ask permission to exist. I was working more hours than ever, not because I needed the money, though it certainly helped, but because every task completed, every name remembered, every tiny victory at the office reminded me that I had worth outside of my last name. Outside of the polite applause I used to receive when I stayed silent and agreeable at family dinners. I had started walking to work a different way each morning, not for safety, but because I liked the unpredictability of it. The feeling that no one could map my route anymore, that even the city couldn't pin me down. And in the quiet of those early morning walks, I found myself less focused on what they had done to me and more on who I was becoming because of it. Then came the knock on the glass door of the law office lobby, sharp and out of rhythm, like a question posed too suddenly. I was adjusting the printer tray, half-crouched with toner on my hands, when I looked up and saw him again. Nathan, standing outside in a coat that looked like it had never known discomfort, face tight with frustration, the kind of expression he used to wear when things didn't bend in his favor. I didn't move at first. I watched him through the glass for a long moment, wondering what he thought he would accomplish by showing up again, unannounced, unwelcome, and so out of place in the carefully rebuilt corners of my new life. Eventually, I walked over and opened the door, not out of curiosity or even civility, but because part of me wanted to see just how far he would go now that the stage he was used to performing on had burned to ash. "You don't return emails," he said like it was some profound accusation. As if silence wasn't the clearest answer I could give, I leaned against the door frame and crossed my arms, saying nothing at first, letting the weight of my presence fill the silence he had grown so used to controlling. "Mom's not sleeping," he continued, as though that was supposed to mean something, as though her insomnia was now my responsibility simply because she had decided too late that my absence made the house colder. "She cries almost every day. Dad doesn't know what to do." I watched his face, trying to read what was real and what was performance. But it was so polished, so carefully rehearsed. I couldn't tell anymore. "Why no?" I finally asked, voice low but steady. "Why is this urgent now? Because I'm gone, or because for the first time you're all uncomfortable?" He looked away for a moment, which told me more than anything he could have said. Then he tried a different tactic. "You're being dramatic, Em. You're blowing this up into something it's not." That word, dramatic, landed like a slap, but I didn't flinch. I had been called that before. Every time I raised a concern, every time I pointed out the imbalance in our family, every time I asked to be seen. "I asked you something," I said, sharper now. "Why didn't you tell Mom to include me? Why didn't you say, hey, maybe we shouldn't exclude my sister from the only vacation we've taken all year?" He shifted, uncomfortable now, scratching the back of his neck like a child caught in a lie. "I didn't think it was my place," he muttered, which was the truth and exactly the problem. I nodded slowly, then stepped back inside. "Then don't pretend to be a mediator now. You made peace with my absence before I ever left." Back at my desk, I waited until my break and opened my email. I reread the message I'd sent him, the one with the attachments, and for a moment I considered writing more, adding context, venting everything I had held back for years. But then I closed the tab and blocked his address. There was nothing else to say. Let the facts speak. Let their own words reflect back at them like a mirror they had spent decades avoiding. Later that week, I passed by a bookstore and saw a flyer for a local gallery looking for amateur submissions. I had been photographing the city during my morning walks. Stray moments, odd architecture, hands caught mid-gesture at crosswalks. And without fully knowing why, I printed a few of my best shots and submitted them. Not for recognition, not even for acceptance, but because it felt like shedding another layer of the old version of me. The one who waited for applause instead of creating her own wrath. Then came the letter. Handwritten, unmarked envelope, no return address. My mother's handwriting unmistakable even after all these weeks. It said very little, just that they missed me, that the house was too quiet, that my father kept walking into my old room like he was looking for something he'd misplaced. But what struck me most wasn't what she said. It was what she didn't say. There was no apology, no admission of guilt, just sadness, as though her pain was somehow proof enough that I should return. I folded the letter carefully and slid it into a drawer I rarely opened. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I didn't even reread it. I just sat there thinking about all the years I had spent waiting for a sign that I mattered. And how now, when I finally stopped asking, they had begun to feel my absence like a hole in their skin. That night, I stood by the window of my apartment, watching the bakery downstairs close for the evening, the lights flickering off one by one. And I whispered to myself, not angrily, not bitterly, but with the steady certainty of someone who had finally stepped out of the fog. They don't know me anymore. And maybe, just maybe, they never really did. Months passed in a quiet rhythm that for the first time in my life felt entirely mine, unshared and uninterrupted by family obligations or the suffocating sense of being watched with expectations that never belonged to me in the first place. The mornings became lighter, the evenings warmer, and in that subtle change of seasons, I noticed something unfamiliar blooming inside me. Not just resilience, not just the hollowed-out calm of detachment, but a kind of unapologetic confidence, the kind that grows only in the soil of loneliness when it's chosen, not forced. My apartment, once bare and echoing with absence, had filled out slowly like a new personality forming. There were books stacked on every surface, photographs pinned carelessly to the wall, half-drunk mugs of tea forgotten beside my desk, and a quiet, persistent energy humming through the space, as though the air itself had decided that this version of me deserved to exist loudly, even if no one else came to see it. The gallery had accepted my submission. That came in a plain white envelope one Friday afternoon. And though I didn't scream or celebrate in any obvious way, I did sit on the floor for a full hour, knees pulled to my chest, letting the weight of it sink into my bones. Someone thought what I saw through my lens mattered. Someone who had never known me, never loved me, and yet still recognized something worth showing to the world. That was the validation I never got at home. The kind that came without conditions, without shared DNA, without years of keeping the peace. The show was set for early spring. Small venue, nothing pretentious, tucked into a repurposed church with high ceilings and white walls that glowed in the soft overhead light. I spent nights printing, framing, preparing, and even rehearsing how I'd explain the meaning behind each photo. Though part of me knew I wouldn't say much, the pictures said more than I ever could. City corners, a cracked sidewalk, the tired eyes of a street vendor, a pair of children caught mid-laughter. I captured life as it was, honest, raw, unpolished, just like me. When the opening night arrived, I didn't expect anyone from my old life to show. I had told no one, posted nothing, left no breadcrumbs, but somehow they came anyway. I saw them the moment I turned around from the refreshments table. My mother in a pale blue sweater she used to wear on Sunday mornings. My father in his old blazer, stiff and out of place, and Nathan standing slightly behind them, his expression unreadable. For a second, time shrank, and I felt that familiar lurch in my chest, the instinct to smile, to greet, to fill the space with words that made everyone comfortable. But I didn't move. I let the silence sit between us like a wall. They walked slowly through the gallery, eyes scanning the photographs, and I watched from the side, arms crossed, body still. My mother paused in front of one particular image, an empty bench under a street lamp shot from behind, as though the person had just gotten up and walked away without saying goodbye. I saw her lips move, whispering something to herself, maybe trying to make sense of it, maybe realizing it was more than just a bench. My father kept his hands in his pockets, his eyes darting from frame to frame, never lingering too long, as if afraid of seeing something he couldn't unsee. Nathan walked slower than the rest. And when he reached the last photo, a blurred figure in motion caught mid-step in the reflection of a glass window, I saw his jaw clench. He turned and looked directly at me. And for a brief, electric second, I saw something flicker across his face. It wasn't anger. It wasn't even sadness. It was confusion. The realization that the person standing in front of him no longer fit the mold he'd held in his mind for years. They didn't approach me. Not that night. They left quietly, not long after walking through the exhibit, and I didn't follow. I didn't wave. I didn't offer a knowing look. They slipped out like strangers in a space where they were no longer entitled to ownership. And that somehow felt more powerful than any confrontation could have. Weeks later, a card arrived. No return address, just my name and familiar handwriting. Inside was a single line written in my mother's cursive, "That wasn't our daughter anymore." No apology, no questions, just that haunting declaration, one that landed with more weight than she probably intended. And the truth is, she was right. I wasn't their daughter anymore. Not in the way they defined it, not in the passive, invisible shape they had carved for me to occupy in the background of their lives. I had grown into something else entirely. Someone they didn't raise, didn't recognize, and maybe didn't deserve. Sometimes late at night, I still think about what would have happened if they had just said, "We see you. We value you. You matter." Would I have stayed? Would I have fought harder to belong to a family that never made room for me in the spotlight? I don't know. Maybe I would have. Maybe I wouldn't. But what I do know, what I hold on to with quiet certainty, is that I stopped asking the wrong people to clap for me. And in doing so, I found an audience that didn't need to be told I was worth watching. I'm not angry anymore, not even hurt. What I feel now is distance. Like a country you once lived in but wouldn't recognize if you went back. They're still there, I'm sure. Going to brunch, celebrating Nathan's milestones. Probably wondering if I'll ever send a birthday card again. But I won't. I've crossed a border they can't see into a life that doesn't require their validation. And when people ask about my family now, I tell them the truth in the most honest, quiet way I know how. I say they used to know me. And then I let that silence speak. Because sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't noise or anger or fire. It's building a life so unrecognizable they can't find a single piece of themselves in it anymore. And that's exactly what I've done. Thank you for listening to this journey of silent transformation. Your thoughts on Emily's path mean the world. Please leave a comment below and share your reflections on this story. Until next time.